So, today, we're going to dive deep into David Grann's incredible book, Killers of the Flower Moon. It is a truly staggering story, a dark chapter in American history that's all about unbelievable wealth, a terrifying string of murders, and, right in the middle of it all, the birth of the FBI as we know it.
And this quote from the book, man, it just perfectly sets the stage, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of the matter. We're about to step into a world where a secret, cold, and calculated evil was operating right out in the open, hidden in plain sight. This is the story of that conspiracy.
And to really understand this story, we're not going to start with some dry history lesson. No, we're going to start with one person, an Osage woman named Molly Burkhart, and the absolute horror she endured as she watched her family be systematically destroyed. Just look at this timeline. The speed of it all is just horrifying. In less than 2 years, Molly's world is torn apart. First, her sister Anna is found shot to death in a ravine. Then her mother, Lizzie, dies from this strange, unexplained wasting illness. Then another sister, Minnie, dies from the exact same thing. Then her cousin is found shot in his car. And finally, her last living sister, Rita, is killed, blown up in her own home. One after another after another. They were just gone.
So you can just imagine the question on everyone's lips, echoing through the Osage Nation. Who is doing this? It was a true reign of terror, this string of killings that the local authorities, well, they seemed either completely unable or, maybe worse, totally unwilling to solve. It created this climate of pure, suffocating fear. As one newspaper at the time put it, the question wasn't if someone would be killed, but who will be next.
So why? Why was all of this happening? What could possibly be the motive? Well, the answer was buried deep in the earth beneath their feet. Because you see, the Osage Nation was, per capita, the single wealthiest group of people on the entire planet. They were sitting on a literal river of black gold, oil, and that unimaginable wealth had put a target on every single one of their backs. $8 million. Let that sink in for a second. That's a huge amount of money today, but we're talking about 1925. This was a colossal, almost unbelievable fortune. And this is the estimated amount that was stolen from the Osage, not just through back alley robberies, but through a corrupt legal system. This wasn't just theft, it was a systematic plundering that made murder not just possible, but profitable.
And how did they get away with it? Well, here's the truly twisted part. It was done through a perfectly legal and perfectly corrupt system. The U.S. government actually created something called the Guardian System. They declared many full-blooded Osage, like Molly, to be financially incompetent. So white guardians, local businessmen, lawyers, ranchers were assigned to manage their fortunes. But instead of protecting them, so many of these guardians used it as a license to steal, turning a system meant for protection into a weapon of pure predation.
And at the very center of this whole spiderweb of greed and murder was one man. A man who acted like the Osage's greatest friend, all while secretly plotting their total annihilation. They called him the King of the Osage Hills. And this just shows you the chilling deception of the man William K. Hale. Publicly, he was the friend, the ally. He was so close to Molly's family that he was a pallbearer at her murdered sister Anna's funeral. Think about that. He promised Molly he'd help find the very people responsible. But in secret, he was the devil. He was the mastermind behind the whole murderous plot, systematically wiping out her family to get control of their oil money through his nephew, who just happened to be married to Molly.
So the body count is rising, the Osage are pleading for anyone to help. But getting justice was basically impossible, because the entire local system, it was rotten to the core. It was designed to fail them. I mean, just look at this. It's a laundry list of corruption. The local sheriff, in the pocket of criminals. Key evidence, like all the records from Anna Brown's inquest, poof, it just vanishes from a locked desk. The state sends in a special investigator, he gets caught taking bribes. And anyone who got too close to the truth, like an attorney named W.W. Vaughn, ended up dead, thrown from a speeding train. William Hale owned the whole system.
With literally no other options, the Osage Tribal Council did the only thing they could. They formally asked the U.S. government for help. And this brought a small, pretty unknown agency all the way to Oklahoma, the Bureau of Investigation. You might know it by its later name, DFBI.
And in this case, it became the defining moment for this young bureau. For its brand new, fiercely ambitious director, a guy named Edgar Hoover,
Solving the Osage murders was about way more than just justice. It was about proving that his new, scientific way of fighting crime could actually work. This was his big test.
The lead agent on the case was this old-school former Texas Ranger named Tom White, and he brought a whole new playbook. These methods were groundbreaking for the time. He sent his agents in undercover pretending to be cattle buyers and insurance salesmen just to listen and quietly gather intel. He didn't chase wild rumors. He painstakingly checked every single alibi. He even went into prisons and turned hardened criminals into informants. And then he used that leverage to squeeze the conspirators until he got the confessions he needed to blow the case wide open.
This was basically Tom White's mantra, right out of Sherlock Holmes. He had to navigate this wilderness of mirrors, a world where everyone was a suspect and lies were being planted left and right. His only option was to eliminate every single impossible lead until the only thing left, no matter how horrifying or improbable it seemed, had to be the truth.
And finally, it all worked. The dam just broke. The first domino to fall was Ernest Burkhart, Molly's own husband and Hale's nephew. He confessed everything, pointing the finger directly at his uncle as the mastermind. He named a hitman who killed Henry Rowan. He named the man who shot Anna Brown. Then another criminal, a guy named Bert Lawson, admitted that Hale had hired him to plant the bomb that killed Molly's sister Rita. Suddenly, the entire conspiracy was laid bare for the world to see.
So, the case was solved, the killers were caught, but for the Osage people, the story doesn't end there, not even close. You see, the end of the investigation was really just the beginning of a long, painful reckoning with everything that had happened. Now you'd think, okay, guilty verdicts, life sentences, that sounds like justice, right? But then you look at that final column, and this is where the story gets a second tragic twist. William Hale, the mastermind, he was paroled. John Ramsey, the killer, paroled. And Ernest Burkhart, the man who helped murder his own wife's family, he wasn't just paroled, he was eventually given a full pardon. For the Osage, it was an absolute betrayal, a profound denial of any real lasting justice.
This is such a powerful symbol of that pain. If you go to the Osage Nation Museum today, you can see this big panoramic photo from 1924. But there's a piece missing, just cut right out. The museum director explained that the missing panel is where William Hale was standing. She said, the devil was standing right there. They literally cut him out of their own history, a wound so deep they had to physically remove it.
And if you want to understand the kind of trauma that echoes down through generations, just listen to this quote. This is from Molly and Ernest's granddaughter. Her father, Cowboy, was in the house that was bombed. He barely survived the explosion that killed his aunt. Imagine that, living your entire life with the knowledge that your own father was part of a plot to kill you. It's just unimaginable.
And here's what's maybe the most chilling discovery from Grann's research. The conspiracy was so much bigger than just William Hale. Look at these numbers. One prominent guardian, Scott Mathis, had 9 Osage wards under his care. 7 of them died. Another guardian had 5 wards, all 5 of them died. These numbers, they defy all logic, all natural explanation.
And that's the devastating truth at the end of all this. The FBI, for all its success, only really solved the cases they knew they could prove in court. Hale's plot was just one piece of a much larger, much more sinister machine of murder for money. Scores, maybe even hundreds, of other suspicious deaths of Osage people during this reign of terror, they were never investigated at all. They were just forgotten.
And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? For nearly 100 years, this entire story was basically buried, wiped from the national memory. And if something this big, this terrible could be forgotten, it just makes you wonder, what other stories, what other injustices are still out there, buried just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to dig them up?